Now, if you've stepped into PvP at all this season, then you probably have noticed a certain weapon getting a substantial amount of usage. Well, that weapon is going to be none other than the submachine gun. And no, you're not dreaming. These mini auto rifles have been dominating PvP to the point where your favorite Destiny YouTubers are now recommending you use them in PvP. Well, I thought it would be fun to take all the current non-sunset submachine guns in the game and put them on a tier list, ranking them from S tier all the way down to the trash tier category. So if you are curious to see which SMG is the king of all submachine guns, sit back, buckle up, and let's get into our tier list. Starting off our list, we had to jump into the exotics right away. Our first weapon on the list is going to be the Exotic SMG, the Tarrabah. This one can be acquired through the Monument of Lost Light just by simply purchasing it. It comes with the exotic perk Ravenous Beast. This weapon stores power when dealing or receiving damage. When Ravenous Beast is fully charged, you can activate it by holding down the reload button, which unleashes the beast. Keep in mind that it comes with a secondary perk, Bottomless Appetite, in which dealing continuous damage extends the duration of Ravenous Beast. Now, the Tarrabah is a 750 RPM SMG, making this an aggressive frame. This deals much higher damage, but in return, the weapon comes with a much higher recoil. So ranking this SMG was fairly easy. This weapon is probably the deadliest weapon on the list. When Ravenous Beast is active, the Tarrabah now fires at 900 RPMs and deals significantly more critical shot damage, thus allowing you to quickly melt the face of all your enemies for 7 seconds while the perk is active. Now you're probably thinking, this is an easy S tier choice. No, it's not. Why isn't it S tier? You're probably wondering. Well, the biggest drawback to the Tarrabah is that when it's stowed, you lose all progress made towards Ravenous Beast. I know guys, it sucks. I know. Not being able to store the Tarrabah really forces your hand to either only use the Tarrabah or stow it and never be able to fully charge Ravenous Beast. Guys, sadly for today's video, this weapon sits in the A tier slot. And if Bungie was ever to create a catalyst for this weapon, which allows you to stow it without affecting the perk, then it would be the best SMG in the game. But for today's video, it sits in A tier category. Up next, we have an SMG that's the only one of its kind, in more ways than one. We have the Exotic Energy SMG, the Wrist Runner. This is a 900 RPM adaptive frame submachine gun with the exotic perk Arc Conductor. When taking arc damage, this weapon becomes more powerful and resists incoming arc damage. Kills extend the time in this overcharged state. It also comes with the secondary perk Superconductor. When Arc Conductor is active, shots fired have a chance to become lightning and return ammo. Now, something to keep in mind is that the Wrist Runner is one of the only adaptive frames still available in the current game. Prior to the launch of Beyond Light, Bungie decided to retire the 900 RPM adaptive frames and only leave 900 RPM lightweight frame archetypes. Well, by doing so, the Wrist Runner was the only adaptive frame still left in the game. Now, you might see a lot of Guardians carrying this weapon on their character. The reason for that is because it is great to combat any arc damage. And with Arc Warlocks being the flavor of the week this season, and even more so in Trials of Osiris, I'm looking at you Arc buddies, the Wrist Runner has moved up the ranks and solidified itself in the higher categories. But even with the bonus damage and arc resistance, it still falls short in a few categories, more specifically in the range department. Even with its fully unlocked catalyst, which gives the Wrist Runner a plus 30 to range, it can still see difficulty competing against some of our more dominant weapons. But for today's video, the Wrist Runner falls into the A tier category. I truly think that this weapon has a lot of potential, and in the right circumstances, it can come in handy. If you've ever heard the phrase, there's a time and place for everything, that's what I feel like when talking about the Wrist Runner. There's a time and place for everything. For today's video, it sits in A tier. Our last exotic SMG for today's video is one that I love and I also hate all at the same time. We have the kinetic submachine gun, the Huckleberry. This is another aggressive frame weapon, which essentially means it's going to be heavy hitting but kick like a mule. The Huckleberry comes with the exotic perk Ride the Bull, increased rate of fire and recoil while holding down the trigger. Kills with this weapon reload a portion of the magazine. It does come with a secondary perk, which is Rampage, but don't be fooled. Unlike our current weapons with Rampage, this Rampage is significantly different. As you can tell, the damage stacks are extremely different. Old Rampage is what I like to call it, is a 20% on the first kill, 41% on the second kill, and 66% on the third kill. Can you see why I love this gun? It's deadly. It has all the right moves. Heck, if you fully unlock the catalyst for the Huckleberry, rather than having a portion of the magazine refilled on a kill, the entire magazine will be refilled after every kill. You're probably thinking that this gun has it all. It does. But why isn't it ranked S tier? Well, for the same reason that Wrist Runner isn't. With all the bells and whistles, the Huckleberry really lacks in the range department. And unlike the Wrist Runner, whose catalyst gives it an extra range bump, the Huckleberry has a range stat of 53, and it really shows. For today's video, the Huckleberry is going to be staying in the B tier category. Even by having old Rampage, the Huckleberry can't really outperform our S and A tier SMGs. Sadly, it sits in B tier. Our next SMG is one that really had a hot start out the gate. Some say it was the reincarnation of the Destiny 2 Year 1 version of the Antelope. We have the Trials of Osiris SMG, the Shayura's Wrath. This is a 600 RPM precision frame that can only be acquired by competing in the Trials of Osiris. This one does come in a regular version and an adept version. But for today's video, we're going to be focusing on the adept version. What I really like about this SMG is that it has a small perk pool compared to our other SMGs on the list, thus allowing you to get a god roll version of this weapon fairly easy. But what really makes this weapon stand out? Well, if you're lucky enough to get a maxed range adept version of this weapon with a range masterwork, you can easily see a max damage of almost 29 meters, which is just insane for any SMG. This isn't even factoring in the lethality of this weapon. This is one of the few SMGs that can roll with the perk Kill Clip, thus turning this weapon into a maxed range bonus damage dealing monster. Now, since this is a 600 RPM SMG, it doesn't deal as much damage as our 750s, but it does have a better recoil compared to the 750s. Comparing it to the 900 RPM SMGs, it still can deal more damage further away and is more forgiving when it comes to the body shot TTK. Precision frames really fall in the middle of the pack of aggressive and lightweight frames, thus giving you the best of both worlds. Shayura's Wrath really separates itself from other SMGs on the list. Why? Well, number one is if you acquire an adept version, you can really outshine all other SMGs on this list in the range department. And if you can get it with the perk Kill Clip, not only do you have impressive range, but now you have bonus damage. If this weapon didn't come with the perk Kill Clip and only came with the max range, this weapon would easily fall into the A tier category. But since it does come with max range and Kill Clip, it sits in the S tier for lethality and range. Continuing down our list of SMGs, we have one that was released last season, and I think it's a sleeper in the current meta. We have another 750 RPM aggressive frame SMG. We have the extraordinary Rendition. This is a kinetic submachine gun that can be acquired by focusing engrams in the Season of the Chosen engram decoder. Now, what really makes this SMG shine is its base stats compared to other aggressive frames. And not only that, it comes with lethality perks. Since this weapon can be easily acquired, getting your hands on a max range version can be easily done, outshining exotics like the Huckleberry. Now, the extraordinary Rendition separates itself from the pack by coming with a few lethality perks that can be acquired, such as multi-kill clip and rampage, both of which won't dramatically decrease your time to kill, but it will slightly decrease it. It'll also give you some room for error. When I said a lot of players have been sleeping on this SMG, that's an understatement. This is an SMG that if you haven't acquired, you might want to try to get yourself a god roll before Bungie puts this weapon into the Destiny content vault. For today's video, this weapon sits in the A tier category. Next on the list is an SMG that's been around since May of 2018. That SMG is none other than the Ikelos SMG. This is by far one of the most consistent 750 RPM SMGs in the game. From its initial release all the way to now, the Ikelos has stuck neck and neck with some of our heaviest hitters in the game. But where does the Ikelos rank on this list? Well, just like majority of the SMGs on this list, they either lack in the stat department or the perk department. And the Ikelos has some of the best stats compared to other 750 RPM SMGs. With its base range stat of 54 and maxing out at 81, giving us damage drop off of almost 20 meters, this is impressive compared to other aggressive frame SMGs. Now, it does come with the perk Seraph rounds, which are great for ricocheting your rounds on surfaces, and it does add additional flinch and range, which is a win-win for this SMG, thus making this perk a great option. But you probably have guessed it, the Ikelos falls short in the perk department. Majority of the perks of this weapon are focused around consistency, which is great, but it's hard not to overlook the lack of damage dealing perks, such as Kill Clip, Multi-Kill Clip, Rampage, and Swashbuckler. I think that if this weapon were ever to roll with the perk Kill Clip or any other bonus damage dealing perks, this weapon could easily rival a lot of the A tier weapons, but for now, it sits proudly in the B tier category. Next on our list, we have our first 900 RPM lightweight frame submachine gun. We have the Multimach CCX, and for those who don't know, lightweight frame grants a plus 20 to your mobility stat when the weapon is out in the ready mode. Now, the Multimach CCX is an Iron Banner exclusive weapon that can only be acquired during the Iron Banner event, thus making it a little bit harder to acquire since it can only be attained as a random weapon drop or by turning in tokens with Lord Saladin. Now, in the last 2 seasons, the newest Iron Banner weapons have received new weapon perks such as Iron Grip, Iron Gaze, and Iron Reach, each boosting one stat from said weapon, but at the cost of another stat. For example, Iron Reach gives the weapon a plus 18 to range, but at the cost of stability. Now, for today's video, for the Multimach CCX, only one role really stood out to me, and that's going to be the max range version, which has the Model 8 red sight, accurized rounds, killing wind, and Iron Reach, all of which grant this weapon an 84 range stat. And if the calculations are correct, this has a max damage of 25.77 meters, which is the most range that any 900 RPM SMG can acquire. But hey, that's not the only deadly role. Maybe you're looking for more lethality. Well, you can always swap out Iron Reach for Kill Clip, which boosts its lethality and only lowers your total damage by 18, thus giving you a max damage of about 22 meters, which isn't bad. I think it's a fair trade-off, giving a little bit of range back for a Kill Clip. The only drawback to the Multimach CCX is that it can only be acquired during Iron Banner. Other than that, it has a small perk pool. It has the ability to get max range or lethality. The Multimach finds itself sitting in the S tier category. It really puts a big check mark in the 2 of the needed categories for SMGs, good base stats, and a good set of perks to choose from. Today, the Multimach CCX sits in S tier right next to Shayura's Wrath. Our next weapon on the list reminds me of Christmas, and for good reason. This weapon can only be attained during the Bungie Christmas event, the Dawning. We have the 750 RPM kinetic SMG, the Cold Front. Now, you can attain this weapon at the moment, but with the Dawning right around the corner, I wouldn't be surprised if Bungie makes this a reward in the upcoming event. Now, this SMG has 2 sets of random rolls, and to be honest, the first set it came out with was much better in the terms of lethality. Prior to it being re-released, it had bonus perks such as Kill Clip and Vorpal, but after its most recent re-release, that's right guys, multiple re's, this weapon now comes with perks such as Rampage and Swashbuckler. In the stat department, even if you give this weapon max range, it still falls short compared to the others in the same archetype. Not only that, it struggles on a few key points: stability, handling, reload, and also aim assist. So based on those factors alone, it was fairly easy to tell that the Cold Front was a C tier weapon. Personally, I think if this weapon comes back with the Dawning event in December, I think that if it comes with the perk Kill Clip again, it will easily be a B tier weapon. But for today's video, the Cold Front sits in C tier. The next weapon on the list is another 750 RPM aggressive frame SMG. We have the Borrowed Time. This is a Gambit exclusive SMG that can only be acquired by playing Gambit and being blessed by RNGesus. This one is It's really tricky and complicated to explain. On paper, this gun isn't impressive. Compared to the Cold Front, it has slightly better stats in all categories except range. But maybe it's the higher aim assist on this weapon because this weapon just felt good to use. When using it in PvP, it felt consistent, and that's what you want out of an SMG. Now, I don't have the God roll, not even close to it. And this is where we get into the weapon's biggest drawback, their perk pool. Unlike 90% of the SMGs in the game, the borrowed time really shows the ugly side of RNG. With more perks than all of the SMGs on the tier list combined, you can really be consumed trying to find the perfect God roll. Overall, utilizing this weapon in PvP, it felt great. You can really feel the difference between the Cold Front and the borrowed time. It might be the higher aim assist stat because this weapon didn't feel like it had ghost bullets compared to something like the Cold Front. Now, it's one of those guns that if you're playing Gambit and you get it to drop for you after a game, then it's a big W. But it's not something that I would actively grind for. Personally, I feel like if the borrowed time had a much smaller perk pool and a bit more lethality in it, it would be an easy A tier. But with so many perk options out there for the borrowed time, it sits in B tier. If you were actively trying to grind for a God roll of this weapon, you could be there for days. Destiny 5 would come out and you probably wouldn't even have your God roll. So for today, the borrowed time sits in B tier. Now switching gears, let's talk about a weapon that 90% of players doesn't even know exists anymore. This weapon is the Mida Mini-Tool. I know a few of you are scratching your head. What do you mean Mida Mini-Tool? Let me give you a quick backstory of this weapon. Upon its initial release in Destiny 2, Bungie really wanted to focus on weapon synergy. Keep in mind that in the early days of Destiny 2, special weapons weren't special weapons. They were in the heavy weapon slot. With weapon synergy in mind, Bungie designed a weapon combo around the Mida multi-tool, thus creating the Mida Mini-Tool. When paired together, both weapons grant an additional speed bonus. But fast forward to the current day, and special weapons have taken the spotlight, thus making this combo irrelevant. Well, this weapon still exists and can be acquired from your collections. It's a 900 RPM lightweight frame and comes with a standard perk selection of fluted barrel, alloy magazine, hipfire grip, and kill clip. Look, if this weapon had any other perks, I'd probably rank it really low. But since it does come with superb handling, hipfire grip, and kill clip, this weapon really surprised me when it came to PvP. Getting a kill and activating kill clip wasn't a difficult task, and when the perk was active, I could easily secure double and triple kills. Even by running empty, the perk alloy magazine would activate and I would reload extremely quickly, allowing me to get back into the fight. I think the biggest drawback to this weapon is going to be its range. You can really see it struggle when dueling further away. When it comes to long range dueling, some of our S and A tier weapons dominate easily, and this weapon can't hold a candle to those extreme ranges, thus ranking it in the B tier column. I think if it had anything other than kill clip, it would rank much lower. But for today, the Mida Mini-Tool ranks in the B tier category. Earlier we talked about the Multimach CCX, but what if I told you it had a brother? There was another SMG in the game that is a similar model, similar archetype, but not as flashy. Well, there is. We have the Escape Velocity. This is a kinetic 900 RPM lightweight frame SMG. Now, take everything you know about the CCX and throw it out the window, since this weapon doesn't hold a candle to it. It does have similar sights and scopes, but it lacks in stats and the perk department. At base, the Multimach is significantly better in such stats as range, stability, aim assist, and recoil direction. The only saving grace to the Escape Velocity is that it's a lightweight frame, giving you that plus 20 to your mobility, and it has a unique set of perks. It comes with perks like Overflow and Elemental Capacitor. But overall, as you can tell, it doesn't have any bonus damage perks, with the exception of Vorpal though. Overall, Escape Velocity is a poor man's CCX. I think there are so many better options out there that are easily obtainable. This weapon could easily fall into the trash tier category, but by having a unique set of perks, it sits in C tier, but by barely, it could easily fall to the trash tier category. Why? Because there's a lot better options out there. Now you might be wondering why I haven't put any SMGs in the trash tier category. You might be thinking,
Maybe there aren't any bad SMGs.
Well, the last 5 SMGs didn't stand out. Their perks and stats were extremely underwhelming, and comparing them to the others on the list, they didn't stand a chance. These SMGs are going to be the 7th Seraph V7, the moon-specific weapon Every Waking Moment, the Death Adder, the Season of the Hunt Friction Fire SMG, and lastly, we have the Stochastic Variable. All of these weapons have unique perks, but since they either lack in lethality or good stats, I can't put these any higher on the tier list. Personally, I wish that all weapons in Destiny 2 can be good, but some weapons are just fun to use and unique. If you can get a unique roll on any of these SMGs that are in the trash tier, they can be extremely fun in modes like Iron Banner and Control. But when it comes to competitive modes like Trials, you might see yourself struggling utilizing these SMGs and finding yourself switching to some of the higher tier options on this list. But with that, let me know down in the comment section which weapons you would move up or down. Which one of these weapons do you see being top tier contenders next season, and what are the best roles you're looking for? I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like, which lets me know to make more content like this. Also, if you're new to the channel, feel free to click that subscribe button for more Destiny 2 content, and don't forget to turn on all notifications. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out today. I hope you have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.